final warning: cease attacks or we drop the polite facade. HFY sci-fi story. The third human colony ship burned like a dying star against the black void of space. Captain Zara Blackwood watched from the bridge of the diplomatic vessel Harmony's Dream as debris scattered across the asteroid field where New Geneva had been building its mining operation. 347 souls had been aboard that colony ship. Now there was nothing but twisted metal and frozen corpses drifting in the darkness. "That's the third one this month," whispered Dr. Kai Nakamura, the expedition's chief scientist. His hands shook as he recorded the destruction on his tablet. Behind his thick glasses, his dark eyes reflected the flames of humanity's latest loss. Commander Phoenix. Rodriguez stood silently beside the captain, her weathered face carved from stone. 20 years of military service had taught her to control her emotions, but the muscle in her jaw twitched with barely contained rage. The silver scar that ran from her left temple to her cheek seemed to pulse with each heartbeat. "Any survivors?" Blackwood asked, though she already knew the answer. "Negative, Captain," reported Lieutenant Nova Ashford from the communications station. The young woman's voice cracked slightly. "The Valkyrian raiders hit them with everything they had: plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, even deployed those flesh-eating nanobots they're so fond of." The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. Through the main viewport, the wreckage of New Geneva continued to drift past like a funeral procession. Personal belongings floated among the debris: a child's toy spaceship, family photos, someone's wedding ring glinting in the light of the distant star. Blackwood closed her eyes and felt the weight of command pressing down on her shoulders like a mountain. For 15 years, she had been Earth's primary diplomatic representative to the Outer Rim territories. 15 years of careful negotiations, cultural exchanges, and patient relationship building with dozens of alien species. She had dedicated her life to proving that humanity could be trusted, that they were peaceful explorers seeking friendship among the stars. The Valkyrians had been testing that commitment for months. "Captain," Rodriguez said quietly, "we need to send a message back to Earth Command. The Colonial Council needs to know about this attack." "What's the point?" Ashford turned away from her station, tears streaming down her young face. "We'll file another diplomatic protest. The Valkyrians will ignore it like they have all the others. Then they'll attack another colony and we'll do the exact same thing all over again." Dr. Nakamura looked up from his tablet. "Nova's right, Captain. The Valkyrian Collective doesn't respect our peaceful overtures. To them, diplomacy is just another word for weakness. They see our attempts at negotiation as proof that we can't fight back." "We can fight back," Rodriguez muttered under her breath. Blackwood opened her eyes and looked at her old friend. She and Phoenix had served together in the corporate wars 20 years ago, back when humanity was still learning how to survive in space. They had seen what human beings were capable of when pushed too far. That was exactly why Earth had chosen the path of diplomacy instead. "No, Phoenix," Blackwood said firmly. "Earth's policy is clear. We are explorers and diplomats, not conquerors. We've left our violent past behind us." "Have we?" Rodriguez challenged. "Because those colonists who just died might disagree with you. Their children who were vaporized by Valkyrian weapons might have some thoughts about our peaceful policies." The captain turned to face her crew. These people had followed her across half the galaxy, trusting her leadership and Earth's vision of peaceful expansion. Now they were staring at her with eyes full of doubt and growing anger. "I know this is difficult," Blackwood began, "but we cannot abandon our principles just because we face tragedy. The moment we resort to violence, we become no different from the species we're trying to civilize." "Civilize?" Ashford stood up, her hands clenched into fists. "Captain, with all due respect, the Valkyrians don't want to be civilized. They want to kill us. They've made that perfectly clear." Lieutenant Commander Dex Morrison, their tactical officer, had been silent throughout the conversation. He was a tall man with cybernetic implants that replaced his left arm and eye, casualties from a pirate attack 5 years earlier. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold as vacuum. "Captain, I've been analyzing Valkyrian attack patterns for the past 6 months. They're not random raids looking for easy targets. This is a systematic campaign designed to test our responses and identify our weaknesses. Morrison activated the holographic display at the center of the bridge. Three-dimensional images showed the locations of every human colony in the Outer Rim, with red markers indicating recent attacks. "Look at the pattern," he continued. "They hit Starlight Station first, our furthest outpost with minimal defenses. When we responded with diplomatic protests instead of military action, they escalated. New Horizon was next, a larger colony with more civilians. Again, we filed complaints with the Galactic Arbitration Council." The hologram zoomed in on the attack sites, showing detailed tactical analyses. New Geneva was the third escalation. They didn't just destroy the colony ship, they made sure to do it as brutally as possible. Those nanobots weren't necessary to disable the vessel. They used them specifically to inflict maximum suffering. Dr. Nakamura studied the display with growing horror. "They're not just testing our military capabilities. They're testing our psychological breaking point." "Exactly," Morrison nodded. "The Valkyrians want to know how much pain they can inflict before we abandon our peaceful policies. They're conducting an experiment, and we're the test subjects." Captain Blackwood stared at the holographic evidence of Valkyrian brutality. Part of her wanted to reject Morrison's analysis, to find some alternative explanation that would allow her to maintain faith in diplomacy. But 20 years of military experience had taught her to recognize a tactical situation when she saw one. "What do you recommend, Commander?" she asked quietly. Morrison's cybernetic eye glowed red as it focused on her. "We send a message back to Earth, not a diplomatic protest, a military intelligence report. Let the people who make these decisions know exactly what we're facing out here." Rodriguez stepped forward. "And if Earth Command decides to maintain current policies? Then we find out how many more colonies the Valkyrians need to destroy before someone realizes that peace has a price," Morrison replied, "and sometimes that price is paid in blood." The communication array aboard Harmony's Dream crackled to life as Captain Blackwood transmitted her report across the light years separating the Outer Rim from Earth. The message would take 18 hours to reach Sol System, where the Colonial Defense Council would debate humanity's response to increasing Valkyrian aggression. While they waited, the diplomatic vessel continued its patrol through the asteroid field where New Geneva had died. Recovery teams worked tirelessly to collect bodies and personal belongings, giving the colonists whatever dignity death in space would allow. Dr. Nakamura spent the time analyzing wreckage samples, documenting the precise effects of Valkyrian weapons technology. His scientific mind cataloged every detail with clinical precision, but his human heart broke a little more with each discovery. "Captain," he reported during the evening briefing, "the nanobots they used were designed specifically for psychological warfare. They don't just consume organic matter. They're programmed to keep victims conscious as long as possible during the process." Commander Rodriguez slammed her fist on the conference table. "Those sick bastards! They're not just killing our people. They're torturing them for entertainment." "It gets worse," Nakamura continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "I found evidence that they were recording the attacks. High-resolution video feeds transmitted back to Valkyrian space during the assault." Lieutenant Ashford looked like she might be sick. "You mean they were broadcasting our people's deaths as some kind of sick entertainment?" "The Valkyrian Collective has a thriving market for what they call exotic termination recordings," Morrison explained with disgust. "Apparently, watching other species die in creative ways is considered high art in their culture." Captain Blackwood stood and walked to the viewport, staring out at the debris field that had once been humanity's hopes for peaceful expansion. Behind her, she could hear her crew's anger building like pressure in a damaged reactor core. "There has to be another way," she said, more to herself than to the others. "Some diplomatic solution that doesn't require us to abandon everything we've worked for." "Captain," Rodriguez said gently, "what if everything we've worked for is built on a false premise?" Blackwood turned around. "What do you mean? What if the assumption that all species can be reasoned with is simply wrong? What if some cultures are so fundamentally different from ours that peaceful coexistence is impossible? Dr. Nakamura nodded slowly. Phoenix might be right, Captain. In my xenobiology studies, I've observed that certain species evolved as apex predators with no natural rivals. They literally cannot conceive of other intelligent beings as anything except prey or threats. The Valkyrians check every box for predator psychology, Morrison added. No empathy for other species, violence as primary social interaction, and complete inability to comprehend negotiation as anything other than delayed submission. The debate continued through the night cycle, with passionate arguments on all sides. Some crew members advocated for immediate military response, while others clung to hope that diplomacy might still prevail. Captain Blackwood listened to every perspective, weighing the moral implications of each possible course of action. 18 hours later, Earth Command's response arrived. Admiral Blake Winters appeared on the main screen, his weathered face betraying years of difficult decisions. Behind him, the familiar blue and green sphere of Earth rotated slowly, a reminder of everything humanity was fighting to protect. Captain Blackwood, the Admiral began, his voice heavy with authority and exhaustion. The Colonial Defense Council has reviewed your report on the New Geneva incident. The details you provided were disturbing. Blackwood straightened in her captain's chair. Sir, my crew and I await your orders. Admiral Winters paused, looking directly into the camera with eyes that had seen too much. Zara, I've known you for 15 years. You've been the voice of reason in some very difficult situations. Your diplomatic skills have prevented 3 wars and established peaceful relations with 17 different species. Thank you, sir. Which is why what I'm about to tell you carries so much weight, Winters continued. The Council has concluded that continued diplomatic engagement with the Valkyrian Collective is no longer viable. Effective immediately, you are authorized to implement Protocol 7. The bridge fell completely silent. Protocol 7 was a classification that hadn't been used since the corporate wars. It authorized military commanders to take any action necessary to protect human civilians, up to and including total warfare. Sir, Blackwood said carefully, are you certain about this decision? Admiral Winters' expression hardened. Captain, while you were filing your report, the Valkyrians attacked 2 more colonies. Serenity Falls and Port Horizon are gone. That's over 800 civilians dead in the past 24 hours. Dr. Nakamura gripped his tablet so tightly his knuckles turned white. Commander Rodriguez stood at attention, her scarred face showing no emotion, but her eyes burned with cold fire. Furthermore, the Admiral continued, our intelligence networks have intercepted Valkyrian military communications. They're planning something they call the Great Cleansing, a systematic extermination of all human colonies in the Outer Rim. When? Morrison asked. 72 hours from now, they're massing their entire battle fleet at the edge of our territory. Our analysts estimate they'll hit every human settlement simultaneously. Captain Blackwood felt the last of her diplomatic hopes crumble into dust. How many civilians are we talking about? 43 colonies, 250,000 men, women, and children. Admiral Winters leaned forward, his face filling the screen. Zara, I need you to understand something. The time for negotiation has passed. These people are counting on us to protect them, and we cannot do that with strongly worded letters and cultural exchange programs. What exactly are you authorizing, sir? The Admiral's next words would echo through history. As of this moment, the Colonial Defense Force is dropping its polite facade. Captain Blackwood, you are hereby ordered to deliver humanity's final warning to the Valkyrian Collective. If they proceed with their planned attacks, we will respond with every tool at our disposal. And if they refuse to listen? Admiral Winters' smile was colder than interstellar space. Then they'll learn why human beings spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of warfare before we decided to explore the stars. The communication ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. For 15 years, humanity had presented itself to the galaxy as a peaceful species seeking friendship and cooperation. Now, faced with extinction, they were about to reveal what lay beneath that diplomatic veneer. Morrison, Captain Blackwood ordered, her voice carrying new authority, contact the Valkyrian Fleet Command. Tell them we request an immediate meeting under neutral space protocols. Captain, Rodriguez asked, are you sure about this? Once we deliver that ultimatum, there's no going back. Blackwood looked around at her crew, these brave souls who had followed her across the galaxy in the name of peace. Now they were being asked to become harbingers of war. Phoenix, those colonists trusted us to keep them safe. The children who died on New Geneva were counting on our protection. We failed them as diplomats. She paused, drawing strength from her convictions. Maybe it's time to try being soldiers again. The meeting took place in the neutral space between the human and Valkyrian territories, in the shadow of a dying red giant star. Captain Blackwood's diplomatic vessel, Harmony's Dream, faced off against the Valkyrian command ship, Blood Harvest, a massive dreadnought bristling with weapons designed for maximum carnage. The Valkyrian delegation consisted of 3 beings that represented everything humanity had tried to move beyond. War Chief Gexatar stood 9 feet tall, his exoskeleton covered in ceremonial scars from countless battles. His 6 eyes gleamed with predatory intelligence, and his mandibles clicked with barely contained aggression. Beside him, Tactical Prime Valcross wore armor made from the bones of defeated enemies. Her 4 arms each held a different weapon, and her reptilian features were twisted into a permanent sneer of contempt. The 3rd member of their delegation was perhaps the most disturbing science dominator, Quetzalcoatl, whose body had been modified with cybernetic implants powered by the life force of captured victims. Tubes filled with glowing liquid ran across his torso, each one containing the essence of a different species. Humans, Gexatar hissed through his translator device. You have requested this meeting. State your purpose quickly, before we decide to add your vessel to our trophy collection. Captain Blackwood stood in the center of the meeting space, surrounded by beings that represented everything she had spent her career trying to understand and accommodate. Her diplomatic training urged her to find common ground, to seek peaceful resolution even now. Instead, she thought of the children who had died screaming as Valkyrian nanobots consumed their flesh. War Chief Gextar, she began, her voice steady and professional. I am here to deliver an official communication from the United Earth Colonial Government. More of your pathetic diplomatic protests? Velcross laughed, a sound like breaking bones. We have used your previous messages as entertainment in our waste recycling facilities. This is not a diplomatic protest, Blackwood replied calmly. This is humanity's final warning. The 3 Valkyrians exchanged glances, their multiple eyes focusing on the human captain with new interest. Warning. Quetzalcoatl's cybernetic implants pulsed with excited energy. Prey species do not give warnings to their predators. They beg for mercy, which we then ignore for amusement. Captain Blackwood reached into her jacket and withdrew a small device, a quantum communicator that linked directly to Earth Command. She activated it, and Admiral Winters' voice filled the meeting space. To the leadership of the Valkyrian Collective, the Admiral's recorded message began. This is Admiral Blake Winters, Supreme Commander of the United Earth Colonial Defense Force. You are hereby notified that any further attacks on human civilians will be considered acts of genocide against our species. The Valkyrians clicked their mandibles in what might have been laughter. Furthermore, the message continued, intelligence sources have informed us of your planned Great Cleansing operation. We are aware of your intention to exterminate all human presence in the Outer Rim territories. War Chief Gextar leaned forward, his massive form casting shadows across the meeting table. Your intelligence sources are irrelevant, human. In 72 hours, your colonies will burn, and your people will scream. There is nothing you can do to prevent this. The Admiral's voice grew colder. This is your final opportunity to reconsider. Cease all hostile actions against human territories immediately, or we will be forced to abandon our commitment to peaceful resolution of conflicts. And what will you do then? Velcross sneered. File another complaint with the Galactic Arbitration Council? Send more diplomats to bore us with speeches about interspecies cooperation? The recording paused for a moment, and when Admiral Winters spoke again, his words carried the weight of absolute certainty. No, we will remind you why human beings conquered an entire planet before we learned to be civilized. Science Dominator. Quetzalcoatl's implants flickered with confusion. Conquered? Your species evolved on your homeworld naturally. There were no conquest campaigns. You misunderstand, the Admiral's voice replied. We didn't conquer Earth from another species. We conquered it from each other. For 10,000 years, human beings fought wars that would make your great cleansing look like a children's game. We perfected the art of killing our own kind across every possible terrain, using every conceivable weapon, driven by every imaginable cause. The meeting space fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. We learned to wage war in frozen tundras and burning deserts. We fought in the depths of oceans and in the thin air of mountain peaks. We created weapons that could level cities, poisons that could contaminate continents, and diseases that could eliminate entire populations. War Chief Gextar's 6 eyes narrowed. If this is true, why have you not used these capabilities against us? Because we chose to become something better, the Admiral replied. We looked at 10,000 years of warfare and decided that intelligence should be used for creation instead of destruction. We chose diplomacy over violence, cooperation over conquest. The recording paused again, and when it resumed, Admiral Winter's voice carried a note of genuine sadness. But you have made that choice impossible. Your attacks on our civilians have forced us to remember what we used to be, what we tried to leave behind. Captain Blackwood watched the 3 Valkyrians carefully. Their predator psychology made them incapable of recognizing danger that didn't present itself through obvious physical threats. They saw human diplomatic efforts as weakness rather than restraint. This is your final warning, the Admiral's message concluded. Cease your attacks on human colonies immediately. Withdraw your forces from our territory. Accept our offer of peaceful coexistence, or face the consequences of awakening a species that spent 10 millennia learning to destroy its enemies. The recording ended, leaving the meeting space in tense silence. War Chief Gexatar stood to his full height, his massive form radiating contempt. Human, your threats are as empty as your diplomatic protests. We have analyzed your military capabilities. Your colony ships carry minimal weapons. Your exploration vessels prioritize scientific equipment over combat systems. You have no battle fleets, no war production facilities, no military infrastructure capable of threatening the Valkyrian collective. You're absolutely right, Captain Blackwood agreed calmly. We don't have any of those things. Tactical Prime Velcross clicked her mandibles in satisfaction. Then your warning is meaningless. In 72 hours, the Great Cleansing begins. Your species will be eliminated from the Outer Rim territories, and the recordings of their deaths will provide entertainment for generations of Valkyrian warriors. You still don't understand, Blackwood said quietly. We don't need military infrastructure. We don't need war production facilities or battle fleets. She reached into her jacket again and withdrew another device, this one larger and more complex than the communicator. When she activated it, holographic displays filled the meeting space with images that made the 3 Valkyrians step backward. For the past 15 years, while we've been conducting diplomatic missions and cultural exchanges, our deep space survey teams have been mapping every inhabited system in the galaxy, not for colonization purposes, for target identification. The holographic displays show detailed scans of Valkyrian worlds, military installations, and population centers. The level of detail was impossible. Cities mapped down to individual buildings, defensive systems analyzed down to their component parts, population distributions calculated with mathematical precision. Our scientific vessels carry sensor arrays more advanced than your best military scanners, Blackwood continued. Every time we've visited your territory for diplomatic purposes, we've been gathering intelligence on your capabilities, your weaknesses, and your infrastructure. Science Dominator. Quetzalcoatl's cybernetic implants began flashing warning signals. This is impossible. Our security systems would have detected such surveillance activities. Your security systems were designed to detect weapons and military threats, Blackwood replied. They were never programmed to recognize scientific instruments being used for tactical reconnaissance. The holographic displays shifted to show something even more disturbing, detailed profiles of individual Valkyrians, including the 3 beings standing in the meeting space. We know where you live, We know where your families gather for seasonal celebrations. We know which facilities produce your food, which installations generate your power, and which locations house your cultural treasures. War Chief Gextar's multiple eyes darted between the displays, recognizing his own private residence among the detailed scans. You have been spying on us for years. Not spying, Blackwood corrected. Learning, studying, understanding. We've approached every species in the galaxy the same way as subjects to be understood, rather than enemies to be destroyed. She deactivated the holographic displays, but their implications hung in the air like the smell of death. The difference is that most species appreciated our peaceful intentions. They welcomed our friendship and reciprocated our respect. You chose to interpret our restraint as weakness. Tactical Prime Velcross raised one of her 4 weapons, but Captain Blackwood showed no fear. You're welcome to kill me, Blackwood said calmly. It won't change anything. This meeting is being recorded and transmitted to Earth Command in real time. If you proceed with your great cleansing, you will discover exactly what human beings are capable of when we stop being polite. What could you possibly do to threaten the Valkyrian collective? Gexatar demanded. Your species has no weapons of mass destruction, no military experience in space warfare, no strategic doctrine for interstellar conflict. Captain Blackwood smiled, and for the first time in the meeting, the 3 Valkyrians felt something they had never experienced before: genuine fear. War Chief, you've made the same mistake that countless human civilizations made throughout our history. You've assumed that because we choose to be peaceful, we don't know how to be violent. She reactivated her communicator, and a new voice filled the meeting space, older, wearier, and infinitely more dangerous than Admiral Winters. This is General Marcus Steele, Commander of Earth's Strategic Response Division. War Chief Gexatar, I spent 40 years studying human military history before we decided to explore the stars. Would you like to know what I learned? The general's voice carried the weight of someone who had seen humanity's capacity for destruction firsthand. I learned that human beings are the most efficient killers the universe has ever produced. Not because we're physically superior, we're actually quite fragile compared to most species. Not because we're naturally aggressive, we're capable of remarkable compassion and cooperation. The meeting space fell silent except for the increasingly rapid breathing of the 3 Valkyrians. We're efficient killers because we never stop learning. Every defeat teaches us new strategies. Every victory shows us new possibilities. Every enemy reveals new weaknesses to exploit. General Steele's voice grew colder with each word. For 10,000 years, we fought each other with sticks and stones, then bronze and iron, then gunpowder and steel, then chemicals and radiation, then genetics and nanotechnology. Each war was more devastating than the last. Each conflict pushed us to develop more creative ways to destroy our enemies. Science Dominator. Quetzalcoatl's cybernetic implants were now flashing in clear distress patterns. His species had never encountered anything like the systematic approach to warfare that the general was describing. And then we learned the most important lesson of all, General Steele continued. We learned that the most devastating weapon isn't the one that destroys your enemy's body, it's the one that destroys their will to fight. The communicator crackled with interference, and when the general spoke again, his words seemed to come from the depths of humanity's violent past. War Chief Gextar, your people take pride in their ability to inflict physical suffering. You record the deaths of your victims for entertainment. You believe that fear and pain are the ultimate weapons. War Chief Gextar tried to project confidence, but his mandibles were clicking nervously. Fear and pain have served the Valkyrian collective well for millennia. They are indeed the ultimate weapons. No, General Steele replied quietly. The ultimate weapon is hope. The 3 Valkyrians exchanged confused glances. In their predator psychology, hope was something that prey animals clung to before they were consumed. It was weakness, not strength. Hope is what we gave you for 15 years, the general explained. Hope that we could coexist peacefully. Hope that we could find common ground despite our differences. Hope that intelligence could triumph over instinct. The communicator crackled again, and suddenly the meeting space was filled with new holographic displays. these ones showing massive structures hidden in the outer reaches of Earth's solar system. While we were giving you hope, we were also preparing for the possibility that you might reject it. These installations have been under construction for 20 years, powered by the same scientific curiosity that made us effective diplomats. The structures were unlike anything in the known galaxy, vast complexes that seemed to bend space around themselves, generating energy signatures that registered as impossible on Valkyrian sensors. "What are those?" Velcross whispered, her weapons forgotten in the face of technology she couldn't comprehend. "Weapons manufacturing facilities," General Steele replied, matter-of-factly. "Each one capable of producing enough ordnance to sterilize a galaxy-spanning civilization in approximately 72 hours. The number struck the three Valkyrians like a physical blow. 72 hours, exactly the same time frame they had planned for their great cleansing. "But that's impossible," Quetzalcoatl protested. "No species could develop such capabilities without the rest of the galaxy noticing. The energy requirements alone would be easily met by species that learned to harness their planet's star before they achieved interstellar flight," the general interrupted. "War Chief, you've been so focused on our diplomatic vessels that you never bothered to investigate what we were doing in our home system. New displays showed the true scope of human industrial development, orbital platforms around the sun itself, asteroid mining operations that had been disguised as scientific research, and construction projects that dwarfed anything attempted by galactic civilization. For 20 years, we've been building the infrastructure necessary to wage war on a galactic scale. Not because we wanted to, but because we remembered the most important lesson from our violent past." "Which is?" Gextar asked, though he was no longer sure he wanted to know the answer. "If you want peace, prepare for war." Captain Blackwood stepped forward, her diplomatic training finally abandoned in favor of the warrior that had always lurked beneath her civilized exterior. "War Chief, you have 6 hours to contact your fleet commanders and order them to stand down from the Great Cleansing operation. You will withdraw all Valkyrian forces from human territory immediately. You will never again attack human civilians." "And if we refuse?" Velcross asked, though her voice had lost all its earlier confidence. "Then you will discover what happens when a species that perfected the art of genocide decides to apply those skills to interstellar warfare," General Steele's voice replied. "We will not destroy your military. We will not target your leaders. We will not waste time with conventional warfare." The communicator crackled one final time, and when the general spoke again, his words carried the finality of absolute judgment. "We will eliminate every Valkyrian civilian population center simultaneously. Your species will cease to exist as a galactic power in less than 72 hours. Your culture, your history, your very existence will become a cautionary tale told to other species who mistake human restraint for human weakness." The meeting space fell into complete silence. The three Valkyrians stared at Captain Blackwood, finally understanding that they were not negotiating with prey animals. They were facing predators who had chosen to be civilized but had never forgotten how to be savage. 6 hours, Blackwood repeated. "After that, humanity stops being polite." War Chief Gexitar looked around at his companions, seeing his own fear reflected in their eyes. For the first time in Valkyrian history, the apex predators had encountered something more dangerous than themselves. We will need to consult with our high command," he said finally. "You have 6 hours to do exactly that," Blackwood replied. "Use them wisely." The meeting ended with the three Valkyrians retreating to their ship like wounded animals, their predator confidence shattered by the revelation of what humanity had been hiding beneath its diplomatic facade. Captain Blackwood returned to her own vessel, where her crew waited in tense silence. "Captain," Dr. Nakamura asked quietly, "were we bluffing?" Blackwood looked at her chief scientist, remembering the gentle man who had spent years studying alien cultures in hopes of building bridges between species. Now that same intellect was being applied to the science of destruction. "Kai, how long would it take to weaponize our stellar engineering projects?" The scientist consulted his tablet, running calculations with the same precision he had once applied to peaceful research. If we converted the solar collection arrays to directed energy weapons, approximately 6 hours for full deployment. And our asteroid mining platforms? They're already equipped with kinetic accelerators capable of moving mountain-sized objects at relativistic speeds. Converting them to weapons delivery systems would take maybe 4 hours. Commander Rodriguez smiled grimly. So we weren't bluffing at all? No, Blackwood replied. We were giving them one last chance to choose civilization over extinction. Lieutenant Ashford monitored communications from her station, tracking the frantic signals passing between Valkyrian ships as their leadership struggled to comprehend the situation they had created. Captain, she reported, I'm detecting massive fleet movements throughout Valkyrian space. It looks like they're recalling all ships from offensive positions. Any word from their high command? Not yet, but the panic in their military communications is pretty clear. They're using words that our translation systems can't properly render, but the emotional context suggests terror. Dr. Nakamura looked up from his tablet with an expression of scientific fascination. Captain, I've been analyzing the psychological profile of predator species. The Valkyrians literally cannot conceive of being prey themselves. Having their fundamental worldview shattered like this, it must be like having their entire reality collapse. Good, Morrison said coldly. Maybe they'll learn some empathy for the species they've been terrorizing. The hours ticked by with agonizing slowness. Throughout human space, the revelation of Earth's hidden military capabilities spread like wildfire. Colonists who had felt abandoned and helpless suddenly realized that their homeworld had been protecting them all along. In the secret facilities throughout the Sol system, weapons that had never been intended for use were brought online for the first time. Scientists who had spent decades on peaceful research found themselves making final preparations for technologies that could reshape the galactic balance of power. Admiral Winters addressed the Colonial Defense Council from his command center, deep beneath Earth's surface. Around him, screens showed the positions of every military asset in human space, a force that had been hidden so well that even most Earth government officials hadn't known it existed. Colleagues, he began, for 20 years we have pursued a policy of peaceful expansion based on the belief that all intelligent species could be reasoned with. Today we learn the limits of that policy. The council members' representatives from every human colony and territory listened in stunned silence as the admiral outlined the true scope of their species' military preparations. The Valkyrian crisis has forced us to reveal capabilities that we hope never to use. The question now is whether we can return to our peaceful policies after demonstrating our capacity for violence. Dr. Elizabeth Hawthorne, the council's chief ethicist, raised her hand. Admiral, assuming the Valkyrians back down, what guarantee do we have that other species won't test us in similar ways? None, Winters replied honestly. Once the galaxy knows what we're capable of, our diplomatic relationships will be forever changed. We can never again claim to be a purely peaceful species. Then why reveal our hand now? Asked Colonial Representative Jackson Hayes. Why not find some other solution that would allow us to maintain our facade? Admiral Winters activated a holographic display showing the locations where Valkyrian attacks had occurred. Each red marker represented hundreds of human lives lost to predator psychology and galactic indifference. Because the facade was built on the graves of our own people, he said quietly, we maintained our peaceful image by allowing our colonists to die rather than reveal our true capabilities. That price became too high to pay. The debate continued for hours, with passionate arguments about the moral implications of their choices. Some council members argued for continued restraint, believing that revealing their military power would make them no different from the aggressive species they opposed. Others demanded immediate retaliation against all species that had ever threatened human interests. In the end, the decision was made for them. 5 hours and 57 minutes after the ultimatum had been delivered, War Chief Gexitar's personal communication frequency activated aboard the Harmony's Dream. Captain Blackwood accepted the transmission with steady hands, though her heart pounded against her ribs. The holographic display materialized, showing the massive Valkyrian leader in what appeared to be a state of complete psychological collapse. Gone was the predatory confidence, the casual cruelty, the assumption of superiority. Gexitar's 6 eyes darted frantically around his command chamber, and his mandibles clicked in rapid, nervous patterns that the translation system struggled to interpret. "Human Captain," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "The Valkyrian High Command has reconsidered our position regarding your territories." "I'm listening," Blackwood replied, her diplomatic training reasserting itself even in this moment of victory. "The Great Cleansing Operation has been permanently canceled. All Valkyrian forces are withdrawing from human space immediately. We will establish a buffer zone of no less than 50 light-years between our territories." Commander Rodriguez leaned forward. "And the colonies you've already attacked? The civilians you've murdered?" Gexitar's massive form seemed to shrink. "Reparations will be paid. Our cultural archives contain detailed records of our raids. We will provide complete information to help you identify and recover any survivors. And we will compensate the families of those who died." Dr. Nakamura looked up from his tablet in surprise. "Captain, I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout Valkyrian space. They're not just withdrawing their military, they're dismantling their forward operating bases. Furthermore," Gexitar continued, his voice growing stronger as he recited what were obviously prepared statements, "the Valkyrian Collective formally recognizes human territorial claims throughout the Outer Rim. We will establish diplomatic relations through the Galactic Arbitration Council and submit to their oversight regarding any future interactions with your species." Captain Blackwood studied the broken predator on her screen. 24 hours ago, this being had been planning a systematic extermination of every human in the Outer Rim. Now he was offering not just surrender, but complete submission to external oversight. "War Chief," she said carefully, "I need to understand something. Your species has never shown fear of any enemy. You've conquered dozens of worlds and enslaved entire civilizations. What changed?" Gexitar's 6 eyes finally focused on her, and she saw something she had never expected to see from a Valkyrian genuine respect. "Captain Blackwood, my species evolved as apex predators. For millions of years, we knew only one relationship with other life forms, hunter and prey. When we achieved spaceflight, we applied the same logic to other species. We saw only weakness or strength, submission or dominance." He paused, his mandibles clicking in what the translation system interpreted as deep contemplation. "But you showed us something we had never encountered before. You demonstrated that the most dangerous predator is not the one that attacks immediately, but the one that chooses when to attack. You had the power to destroy us from the beginning, yet you chose restraint. That level of self-control, it represents an evolutionary advancement that we cannot comprehend." Lieutenant Ashford looked stunned. "They're afraid of our self-discipline?" "More than afraid," Gexitar admitted. "We are in awe of it. A species that can develop weapons capable of galactic genocide and then choose not to use them unless absolutely necessary. Such beings are beyond our ability to predict or counter. We cannot fight an enemy whose greatest strength is knowing when not to fight." The bridge of the Harmony's dream fell silent as the implication sank in. Humanity had won not through superior firepower or tactical brilliance, but through the same quality that had made them effective diplomats, the wisdom to know when to use their capabilities and when to restrain them. "There is one more thing," Gexitar added, his voice dropping to barely audible levels. "Our intelligence networks have been monitoring galactic communications since your ultimatum was delivered. Word of this confrontation is spreading throughout known space. Other species are reconsidering their relationships with humanity." Commander Morrison's cybernetic eye glowed as he processed this information. "What kind of reconsideration?" "The Zephyrian hegemony has withdrawn their territorial dispute claims against your mining colonies. The Crystalline Collective is offering formal alliance treaties. Even the Hive clusters are requesting diplomatic contact for the first time in their recorded history." Dr. Nakamura shook his head in amazement. "They're not just afraid of our weapons, they're impressed by our restraint." "Exactly," Gexitar confirmed. "Throughout galactic history, every species that achieved your level of technological capability immediately used it for conquest. The fact that you developed such power and then hid it while pursuing peaceful expansion, It suggests a level of wisdom that most civilizations never achieve. Captain Blackwood stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the debris field where New Geneva had died. The wreckage was still there, but somehow it looked different now, not like a monument to failure, but like a reminder of the price of peace. "War Chief," she said finally, "I want you to understand something. We didn't reveal our capabilities because we wanted to threaten you. We revealed them because you forced us to choose between our principles and our people. And you chose your people," Gexitar observed, "as any truly strong species would." "We chose both," Blackwood corrected. "We found a way to protect our people while maintaining our commitment to peace. The weapons you fear will be dismantled as soon as this crisis is resolved. We built them only because we had to, and we'll destroy them as soon as we can." The Valkyrian leader's mandibles stopped clicking entirely. "You would disarm yourselves, even after demonstrating your superiority? That's what makes us different from every other species you've encountered," Commander Rodriguez said with pride. "We're strong enough to choose weakness when strength isn't necessary." The transmission continued for another hour, as the details of Valkyrian withdrawal were negotiated. By the time it ended, Captain Blackwood felt as if she had aged a decade in a single day. The galaxy would never be the same, and neither would humanity's place in it. Dr. Nakamura was the first to break the silence after Gexitar's image disappeared. "Captain, I've been thinking about the implications of what just happened. We've fundamentally changed the nature of galactic diplomacy." "How so?" "Every species we encounter from now on will know that we're capable of destroying them completely, but choose not to. That knowledge will color every interaction, every negotiation, every relationship we attempt to build." Lieutenant Ashford nodded thoughtfully. "It's like we can never be seen as harmless again. But maybe that's not such a bad thing. The question," Morrison added, "is whether we can live up to the reputation we've just created. Other species will be watching to see if we really are as disciplined as we claim to be." Captain Blackwood returned to her command chair, feeling the weight of humanity's future pressing down on her shoulders. "Then we better make sure we are. The galaxy is about to discover whether human beings can be trusted with ultimate power." The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks, during which reports flooded in from every corner of human space. The Valkyrian withdrawal was proceeding faster than anyone had expected, with their forces abandoning territories they had held for decades. More significantly, dozens of other species were requesting formal diplomatic contact with Earth's government. By the time the Harmony's dream reached Sol System, the Colonial Council had been in emergency session for days, debating how to handle humanity's new status as a galactic superpower. The weapons facilities that had been revealed during the crisis were already being decommissioned, their technologies transferred to peaceful applications, just as Captain Blackwood had promised. Admiral Winters met them at Luna Station, his weathered face showing a mixture of pride and concern. "Zara, you and your crew have changed the course of galactic history. The question now is whether we can handle the consequences." "What kind of consequences?" she asked. 3 different species have requested permission to establish permanent embassy stations in our territory. The Galactic Arbitration Council wants to relocate their headquarters to a neutral system under joint human-alien administration. And," he paused, "the Crystalline Collective has offered to share their most advanced technologies with us as a gesture of respect." Dr. Nakamura whistled softly. "They're treating us like the dominant species in the galaxy." "Because that's what we've become," Admiral Winters replied. "The moment we demonstrated that we could destroy any civilization, but chose not to, we became the de facto peacekeepers of known space. Every species that wants to maintain stability will look to us for protection. Every species that wants to cause trouble will try to test our resolve." Commander Rodriguez crossed her arms. "And if we don't want that responsibility? Then we'll have to prove it by actually using those weapons we said we'd dismantle," the Admiral said grimly. "The galaxy won't believe in our peaceful intentions until we demonstrate them consistently over decades." Captain Blackwood looked out through the station's viewports at the blue-green world that had given birth to a species capable of both ultimate violence and ultimate restraint. Somewhere down there, children were being born, who would grow up in a universe where humanity was no longer the newcomer species seeking acceptance, but the guardians of galactic peace. "Admiral," she said finally, "I'd like to request a new assignment." "Oh? I want to establish a new diplomatic training program. If we're going to be responsible for galactic stability, we need diplomats who understand both the power we wield and the restraint we must show." Admiral Winters smiled. "What would you call such a program?" Captain Blackwood thought of the children who had died on New Geneva, the colonists who had trusted in humanity's protection, and the species throughout the galaxy who were now looking to Earth for guidance. "The Academy for Civilized Warfare," she said, "will teach our diplomats to be ready for both peace and war, so they never have to choose between protecting our people and maintaining our principles." And so humanity took its place as the reluctant guardians of galactic peace, armed with weapons they hoped never to use, and wisdom they had earned through 10,000 years of learning to be better than their nature demanded. The galaxy would remember the day that Earth dropped its polite facade, not as the beginning of human conquest, but as the moment when true civilization was born among the stars. In the years that followed, the phrase, "humanity's final warning," became legendary throughout known space, not as a threat, but as a promise that somewhere in the galaxy, there existed a species strong enough to choose mercy over vengeance, wisdom over power, and peace over the easier path of war. The universe was a safer place because of it. The end.